I've kept dozens, maybe even hundreds of aquariums at this point. I've never had the opportunity to try branching out to immersed growth, terrariums, or other plant setups outside of the water. I've always just been an aquarium guy. That is until now, so I'm really excited about this new project. The gallery is starting to get quite busy from a maintenance perspective. You can even see another empty aquarium to the left that hasn't been scaped yet. So I'm trying to find a way of making this build really simple. It's not going to have a filter, definitely no CO2, and the substrate and planting are also going to be kept extremely simple. I've also never used any DOOA products before, so I almost feel like I'm going to be learning everything as I go from here. I'll start off by setting up the DOOA magnet light stand. These come in different sizes depending on the aquarium you select. It's pretty light but sturdy. The design is really cool, but I'll show you why later. The light that is meant to accompany this stand is the DOOA Magnet Light G Slim. This is an upgraded light from the original magnet light, which is, well, not so slim. When you purchase it, you'll notice it doesn't come with any plug, only a USB plug-in. For me, this is okay because my power strip has a USB input available, but you may have to buy one separately, which is a bit inconvenient. This is where I find the design of the DOOA stand appealing. It has a slot at the top to feed the wiring through. You can easily hide this wiring behind the stand so nothing is visible. The magnet light just simply attaches to the top of the stand, and the cable is easily connected to it. To me, this is such a simple and awesome design. The magnet light has a dimmer switch attached to it. It has 6 levels of brightness and an on-off power switch. Again, very simple and user-friendly. If you want to have the full aesthetics of what DOOA offers, the whole package is necessary. But I do feel like you can easily run a successful Nano aquarium without these two specific products, especially if you're trying to do it in a more budget-friendly manner. Now it's time to unbox the aquarium. DOOA Neo Glass Air has several different sizes that they offer. This is the smallest one that they have. It's only 20 by 20 by 8 centimeters, or 8 by 8 by 3 inches. This means that the water volume is just 3.2 liters or 0.8 gallons, and that assumes that there's nothing in the aquarium at all except for water. Despite the small size, I'm still equally excited about setting this up. Having dimensions like this can really spark the imagination of many different possible layouts. For this layout, I'm only going to be using sand instead of a soil substrate. The reason for this has to do with the plants that I will reveal later on. I selected 88 Plata Sand, which is one of my favorites that I use very frequently. I use my sand flattener to raise the substrate very high in the background. By very high, I mean it is essentially reaching the top of the tank at about 8 centimeters. It's a pretty decent incline at first, but as I build the hardscape, I'm actually going to continue building it all the way up to the rim. Since this is a whole new style of aquarium keeping, I spent a lot of time trying to get inspired by different layouts. I thought it might be nice to build a more modern Iwagumi layout using 80A Yamaya Stone. This is the same stone that I have in my 90p aquarium. Thankfully, I have a lot of extras laying around. Most of the Yamaya stones are quite small, so I thought they'd be very suitable for such a small aquarium. This largest stone that I selected wasn't going to create the same impact as I was hoping. It's a little bit smaller than I thought. But I spent a while trying to find its correct positioning. it was really difficult to find its placement. Admittedly, I have to say that I always practice build these hardscapes before I film. I like to build hardscapes on my own time without a camera recording. When I tried rebuilding the layout I practiced, I was having so much trouble replicating it. I began getting frustrated after a while and gave up on the idea of truly replicating it. Instead, I eventually turned off the camera for a little while and just focused on creating a similar layout that would also be impactful. Okay, so here I am skipped ahead to the point where I was starting to figure things out. You can see this is shaping out to be a concave layout, with a majority of the stones facing in opposing directions. There is a bit of a pathway that's forming on towards the top right, but I'll highlight that in a different way later. To create perspective and depth, you can see that I have mostly larger pieces of stone in the foreground, and smaller ones that are higher up as I move back. It sort of creates a mountain-esque feel, I think. There's a few openings that I'm trying to fill in the cracks for. It'll give me more places to plant, but I'm also hoping it'll keep the hardscape a bit more stable too. I had plenty of crushed up pieces of Yamaya Stone to use as accent pieces in the front. Despite its appearance, Yamaya Stone is pretty fragile and breaks apart easily. It's almost similar to dragon stone in that way. This is not my typical kind of hardscape. I usually build more traditional layouts, but I think it's pretty impactful for such a small aquarium. It actually reminds me of a hardscape that I built for a workshop earlier in the year. I liked it enough where I almost wanted to take it home myself, but I think this one is even nicer. I made a bit of a mistake when filling the aquarium with water. I meant to fill it from the back where I left it slightly open. As a consequence, it really shifted some of the sand in the foreground and messed up some of the detail stones. I'll be able to fix and tweak that later though. I think it's incredible how easily I could fill this up to the top with water. It was essentially 2 half-filled cups of RO water. That means it's probably maybe 1 liter or 0.25 gallons of water. It goes without saying that livestock will definitely not be added to this. But wait, did I forget to do the planting? Well, not quite, and I'll show you why. I've been interested and inspired by layouts that use terrestrial moss. The problem is that most mosses are kept in closed containers for terrariums. I contacted a few plant stores in my area, but I wasn't getting much help and decided to just take things into my own hands. So I decided to just take a stroll through my backyard and began collecting moss that I found. It was a lot of fun. I felt like a kid again, just exploring around and picking things out to see how they can grow under my care. This first moss that I collected, I believe, was some types of woodsy thyme moss. I'll leave the scientific name below since I can't really pronounce it. After collecting, I placed the moss in a bucket with RO water. This is to clear out dirt, debris, and any other pests or insects. I was keeping it for several days, but it was pretty clear it wouldn't work in this layout. First of all, it was really suffering and drying out quickly when I removed the lid to the container. Also, I think the leaves were just too large to be suitable for such a tiny aquarium. So I made a second trip to pick out some different mosses that I could find. These seemed to be quite a bit more suitable. This time I placed them on pieces of Yamaya Stone in a container filled with RO water. I wanted to see how well it could do in this kind of environment, since it would be similar to that of the aquarium. Some of the moss was collected in more moist soil, and others were actually dried up and collected on my fence. Since it's difficult to ID moss that is this small still, I don't know exactly what it is, but I think it might be some type of haircap moss. Despite research saying otherwise, this moss had been doing quite well in this environment, assuming that I was doing pretty frequent misting. I left it to grow for about a week or two just to make sure it wouldn't dry out. You can see that there's some variation in how well they're growing in and the coloring. I did collect them at different times. Now back to the aquarium. I filled it up like this before planting anything because I wanted to see which areas of the stone would remain the most moist and would be the most suitable for the moss. Those driest areas probably wouldn't be successful for this particular moss to grow on, at least initially. To follow with the hardscape, I plant the larger pieces of moss towards the front of the aquarium. I'm kind of improvising here. I didn't really have any exact plan of where the plants would go. I figured if I wasn't too happy with their initial location, it would be pretty easy to just pick them up and move them to a different spot. As I move more to the background, I placed smaller pieces of moss. As I started, I began changing my mind on the concept. With the hardscape, I recognized that there was this path forming to the background. I was going to plant around it, but I decided to make the path mostly moss instead. So you can see I start filling in the gaps more and more until it mostly fills in. I had some extra pieces of moss remaining, so I thought it would be interesting to just plant them in random places that weren't really visible from the main view of the layout. It was mostly just out of curiosity and wondering where it might grow most successfully. I thought it could be a way of cultivating a little bit more moss too for future projects. Here's the finished layout. Some of these pieces of moss have grown in for longer, so you can see that some are more brownish and some are green, but at least you get a general idea of how it looks. I thought it would be worth discussing the maintenance of this aquarium. This is all new to me, but my sense is that the maintenance will be really simple but incredibly unforgiving. Since the water volume is so low in this aquarium, I will probably have to refill this on a daily basis with more RO water to prevent the mosses from dying. Additionally, I have some DOOA Wabi Kusa mist and a second spray bottle that just has water in it to spray down the mosses. Since I'm trying to establish the moss, I've been trying to mist it whenever it seems a bit dry, so that ends up being about 3 to 5 times per day. I'm sure I don't need to do it this much, and I can probably lower it even more so as the moss stabilizes. Since the spray bottle leaves some water stains, I'll definitely be wiping the glass down on a regular basis too. But that's about it for this aquarium. It's very simple, much more so than the fully planted aquariums that I keep on the other side of the gallery. There's another empty aquarium in the gallery. I'll have to set that one up in another upcoming video. If there are any moss experts, please let me know if you can confirm the ID of this moss. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.